Hi everyone, this is Dr. Hall and I'm going to go through with you the flexor compartment of the forearm. So this is a rendering of my right forearm, the anterior surface, and this is going to be the flexor compartment here. So I've got the outlines of the major bones, the phalanges, metacarpals, carpals, radius and ulna, right, thumb side and pinky side, and then of course we have the distal humerus with the lateral epicondyle on the radial side and the medial epicondyle on the ulnar side. So the deepest muscle in the anterior forearm in the flexor compartment is the Pronator Quadratus. So I like this muscle because it's named for what it does. It pronates the hand, right? Because this is supination, because you could drink soup out of it. This is pronation, right? So it's going to pull, and so its fiber direction is like this. It's very striking when you look at it on the cadaver because it is the only muscle that you're going to find in the forearm here that has that horizontal arrangement of the fiber direction, and it's going to pull the radius over the ulna to pronate the hand. So our Pronator Quadratus is our deepest layer. Good, we're still in focus here. And so that's kind of the fourth layer. The next layer up, moving from deep to superficial, we're going to have this muscle here that is going to flex the thumb. So this muscle here is the Flexor Pollicis, because it's going to the thumb, longus. So that muscle, when it shortens, right, we're gonna flex all these, the entire thumb. Right next to it in this third layer, attached along the ulna, and then sending tendons out to the distal phalanx of every digit. Oh, it's hard to keep them all in line. All right, so all the way out to the distal phalanx, broad muscle attached to the ulna here, doesn't cross the elbow. This is going to be the flexor digitorum profundus because it's the deepest flexor digitorum. In the extensor compartment, we only had extensor digitorum and extensor digiti minimi and extensor indicus. But on the flexor compartment, we have a flexor digitorum profundus, and then there's going to be another one on top of that called the flexor digitorum superficialis. So the flexor digitorum profundus, because it goes all the way out to the distal phalanx, it flexes those distal interphalangeal joints for us. Right? It's kind of hard to do that without also flexing the other ones. So I'm going to pause here for a moment in showing you the muscles because now we are deep enough, or we're superficial enough, that we're going to actually encounter some blood vessels and some nerves. So I have here my brachial artery, which is going to bifurcate into the ulnar artery on the ulnar side, and the radial artery is going to be on the radial side. This one I'm going to leave out because I have to put it on superficial to some other muscles, but the ulnar artery is going to come right down this way and along the ulnar surface of the forearm. No surprise there. We're also going to have the ulnar nerve, which is coming from over near the medial epicondyle, and it is going to join with the ulnar artery, so that when we're in the distal forearm, the ulnar artery and ulnar nerve run together. Now remember, we're not going to have a radial nerve on this surface. The radial nerve primarily provides, right, innervates the posterior forearm, the flexor surface of the forearm. So radial artery is kind of on his own. The other nerve that we're going to have is the median nerve, which we're going to have running right along with the brachial artery and right along the surface of the flexor digitorum profundus. So now that we have these structures, we can now add our next muscular layer. So our deepest layer was Pronator Quadratus, Flexor Pollicis Longus, Flexor Digitorum Profundus. Our second layer from the top is the Flexor Digitorum Superficialis. This is a very big muscle. It's going to go over top of the ulnar artery and attach to the medial epicondyle, the ulna, and the radius, and it's going to send its tendons out to the middle phalanx. So this one is going to bend these joints for us. So that's our Flexor Digitorum Superficialis. And so a key landmark here is that usually when you're doing a dissection, the median nerve is going to be found right on the undersurface here of that Flexor Digitorum Superficialis, in between the Superficialis and the Profundus. So that's a really useful landmark for us. Now we're ready for the fourth layer, the most superficial layer. And this is where we're going to see our bookends, our Flexor Carpi Ulnaris, which is also going to attach up here on the medial epicondyle. It's going to come down and attach to the carpal bones on the ulnar surface. So Flexor Carpi Ulnaris, so we can flex our wrist in this direction. You can kind of even feel that tendon moving. Then the next muscle, moving from medial to lateral, is the Palmaris Longus. This is a tiny, skinny muscle, also attaches to the medial epicondyle of the humerus, comes out into the hand, and is going to go into a broad structure of connective tissue called the palmar aponeurosis. Now, the interesting thing about the Palmaris Longus is that not everybody has one, and that sometimes you can have one on one side and not have one on the other side. So a really quick test to see if you have one, put your forearm down on a surface, oppose your pinky and thumb together, and then flex your wrist. I don't have one. If I did, you would see a little tendon pulling up when I did that. You're like, oh, but I see this one here. And that's my Flexor Carpi Radialis. If you see a tendon very prominently pop up, that is the Palmaris Longus. But it's very interesting. On some of the cadavers, they'll have one on one side, but not on the other side. It's really kind of neat. All right, let's put our radial artery in position here. Okay, so we have Flexor Carpi Ulnaris, Palmaris Longus. Next, we have the Flexor Carpi Radialis, and this one's going to actually attach to the base of the second metacarpal, and that's going to flex our hand in this direction. And the one thing that I want to point out about the Flexor Carpi Radialis is we tend to think of the Carpi Radialis and Ulnaris as bookends, but if you look, this Flexor Carpi Radialis is almost in the middle of the forearm here, right? That's its tendon there, that's it right there. So it's not as far lateral as we might anticipate. And so when we're working with the cadaver, that's something to really keep in mind. Then our final muscle is this one here called the Pronator Teres. So we have yet another pronator. This one is located up in the proximal forearm. And look, we have all four of these muscles attaching to the medial epicondyle. And a useful mnemonic to remember them, this is Pronator Teres, Flexor Carpi Radialis, Palmaris Longus, and Flexor Carpi Ulnaris, is pass, fail, pass, fail. So it starts with a P, starts with an F, starts with a P, starts with an F. So those four muscles, they kind of go attach to the medial epicondyle and then like this. So Pronator Teres, Flexor Carpi Radialis, Palmaris Longus, Flexor Carpi Ulnaris, right there. And so that is it for the flexor muscles, but we have one more muscle to add because it is present and visible in this area, and it's attached up to the humerus, to the distal humerus here, above the lateral epicondyle, and comes down and attaches to the distal radius. This is our friend from the extensor compartment of the forearm. This is the Brachioradialis. Okay, which because it crosses the elbow joint and attaches up here on the humerus, is one of the flexors. It aids with flexion of the elbow. Brachioradialis. So now I'm going to go as if I am dissecting. So I'm going to start with the most superficial structures and go down. So here we have the Brachioradialis. Here I have my pass, fail, Pronator Teres, Flexor Carpi Radialis, Palmaris Longus, Flexor Carpi Ulnaris. So that is the first layer. My second layer has the Flexor Digitorum Superficialis, which comes out and flexes the proximal interphalangeal joints and also attaches to the medial epicondyle. Just deep to that, I'm going to see the median nerve. So if I go ahead and remove that, we can see the median nerve coming right down the midline. That's going to supply the lateral aspect of the palmar hand. I can also see my radial artery coming down, my ulnar artery, which is going to run along with my ulnar nerve distally. The ulnar nerve is going to supply the medial portion of the palmar surface of the hand as well as the dorsal surface of the medial hand. And let's see. Did I do them both right? So ulnar artery, ulnar nerve, median nerve, radial artery. I'm going to remove those. And now I see my third layer, my Flexor Pollicis longus for flexing the thumb, my Flexor Digitorum Profundus, and then peekaboo between those, this wonderful horizontal fiber direction, Pronator Quadratus. So there are the structures that we find in the flexor compartment of the forearm.